Good afternoon and welcome to 365 Days of Amazing Stories with Theo Mayer. Here we are on day 258. I'm continuing the story of Nur al-Din, Ali ibn Bakar, and the slave girl Shams Al Nahar from 1001 Arabian Nights. Now you might remember that they were put into boats after their abduction. Shams Al Nahar and Nur al-Din and the jeweler had come to tell the robbers who these people really were. Captain the guard had found them on the other side of the river. The robbers had fled. They were put into boats. Shams Al Nahar taken back to the caliphs, and the jeweler and Nur al-Din, they were taken back to their quarters in Baghdad, or to a place close to their quarters along the river. Well, the jeweler went to Nur al-Din's, made sure he was okay, went back, spent quite a long time sleeping. When he finally came to and was out and about, who should come but the maid? The maid informed him of everything that had taken place for Shams Al Nahar, who was a complete wreck. And her heart burned out of compassion for the jeweler and Nur al-Din, also for all that the jeweler had lost. The maid, after sharing the entire story with the jeweler of what had taken place, since Shams Al Nahar got back and shared the story with the maid, and the maid shared the story with the jeweler of what happened to them as well, that they had fled. She had with her a bag of money, which Shams Al Nahar had put together in order to give the jeweler to replace all the goods that had been stolen. And the jeweler looked into the bag. There were 2,000 gold dinars in there. The maid had been extremely reluctant to go to Nur al-Din's house. She did not want to implicate anyone or have anything to do with him, and fear that something bad may happen. So after this meeting, the jeweler took the bag of money, put it in his house, and he went off to tell Nur al-Din what had happened. And when he went, Nur al-Din was not in a good place. He was, well, on his bed, laying there, looking more like death than life. And the jeweler brought him what he thought would be good news, that Shams Al Nahar was fine, that she'd given him this big bag of money, and Nur al-Din was like, oh my God, such generosity this woman has. And he said, yes, all of your things should be replaced. And he called to one of his servants and told this servant to go and get all of their silver and gold utensils, or at least a good amount of them, and to bring them and give them to the jeweler. And it was far more than what had gotten taken. And the jeweler did not quite know what to do with all this. But he said, look, you know, seeing the two of you together is my greatest pleasure. And I will, in fact, even put myself at peril to put you back together again. And Nur al-Din was, are you crazy? This is ridiculous. Look what the God Almighty has done for us. It has spared us to, from having some scandalous calamity be exposed. We can't keep going on like this. All relationships end. He said, either in fulfillment or death, loss. All relationships end. He said, this one is going to go nowhere. Can you not see it? There's no solution here. I will not gain fulfillment in this relationship. The God Almighty has already allowed me to know that, and spared me in the process from scandal. No, I invite death. If I thought it would be good, I would hasten my death. But there's nothing that I can do at this point. The jeweler tried to console him and said, bear your losses and your gains equally, for they come one after the other. There's no point in lamenting your losses. and there is really no point in praising your gains. Bear it all patiently, for that is how one lives a good life. Nur al-Din would have nothing of it. He just was over it. Well, the jeweler spent the rest of that day, the evening, spent the night there. And in the morning he said, I'm going to go to my house and see if there's some news from one of Shams Al Nahar's maids. And so, or the maid herself, though there's only one that really brought messages. So the jeweler left, and Nur al-Din, before he left, said, look, come back quickly, because you can see the state that I am in. So the jeweler goes off, he gets to his house. No sooner had he really settled into being there than there was a knock upon the door, and who was there but the maid herself. And she looked incredibly distressed, shaking almost, and her face looked stressed, and she turned to the jeweler and said, the worst has taken place. Calamity is upon us. What we have feared has happened. And the jeweler's like, what? What has happened? And the maid says, my lady, she was upset with one of the maids who had been there with us that night. And she called for the maid to be beaten. And the maid fled through one of the open doors that was there. And she escaped to the edge of the palace garden. And there one of the other guards stopped her. And he could see the distress that she was in. And he comforted her. And when he did so, she revealed to him everything that had taken place. The guard immediately had her taken to the caliph, and the caliph, Harun al-Rashid, questioned her relentlessly until she confessed everything, all that had transpired in those 2 nights. At that point, Harun al-Rashid, he summoned Shams Al Nahar, not to see her personally, but to have her put in his own quarters under the guard of 20 eunuchs, 20 of his best guards, standing patrol, that she may not leave and none may come to her. I do not know what to do. I waited for a chance like this to see you, and finally it presented itself. But I do not know what fate is in store for me or for her. This is what has taken place. Well, the jeweler's response, you can quite imagine. He didn't know what to say. And we will leave the story there and find out what happens next.